Hello, you are listening to the Blue Monday podcast. This is a 3 times weekly audio show looking into the exciting happenings of Ipswich Town Football Club. My name is Benjamin Bloom and I'll be here each and every Friday for this, the Blue Monday preview show, with a very special guest to get their insider view on the next opponents for Ipswich Town. Jack, don't comment on the first attempt at that intro. Ladies and gentlemen, representing Norwich City, he is the host of Talk Norwich City on YouTube and our highest rated guest all season. So a big East Anglian, well-mannered, kind, polite and respectful welcome to Mr. Jack Reeve. Jack, how is your pre-derby week progressing?
You know what? It's going quite smoothly, actually. I can remember the last. Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be welcomed back. It's nice that the last one went down reasonably well, and I think it did. I think I expected that actually because I think we had a good chat, and it's not often you see from a fan's point of view anyway. From a journalistic point of view, it's different, but from a fan's point of view, a nice balanced discussion. I think we got that nicely last time. How's my derby week going? Quite well. I'm quite chilled out, which feels odd because I'm often very stressed. I'm not sure if it's because I've been kind of engulfed in work or I almost feel complacent going into this weekend, and I'm worried about that. I am. It might be because it's the Sunday. I know it's usually a Sunday, but you have that Friday and Saturday to kind of get to grips with it. But yeah, I'm feeling relatively calm, which is odd, and it'll be interesting to see whether I develop any nerves throughout this chat. But yeah, I feel good.
I thought about standing in the ground earlier today, and I did feel sick. Look, let's quickly get to the elephant in the room. So I appeared on your channel on Tuesday, and since then my mobile phone has bleeped every 5 seconds because it did zillions and zillions of views. Where can let's let you do this. Where can people find the video, and what went down, Jack?
Yeah, so I thought it was a really good podcast actually. You came on the TNT podcast, which is we upload every Tuesday. We obviously usually get Norwich City related guests, so whether that be ex-players, current players, journalists, fans, whatever that may be. You were, of course, an Ipswich fan coming on a Norwich channel. That's always going to cause some kind of controversy, whatever we do. So let's get that out of the way. And I think the reason it was more Chris that got flack, and Chris sometimes gets flack. Because it's a strange kind of complex because we're best mates. Everyone thinks we're brothers. We're not brothers. I'm coming at it from a more balanced and because of what I do, a slightly more mediating kind of role. So I pose the questions and I let people argue about them, and I don't really get too involved with that. And I think Chris thought that you were really going to bite at his answers and come back at him, and in actual fact, you didn't, and we had a really long chat after it actually because we were a little bit disappointed in terms of people didn't quite get the gist of the tone, and I do understand that. But we had a really long chat, and I think it was my fault partially for maybe posing the wrong questions, and it was Chris's fault for not quite understanding the way that the chat was going. But I think the thing that Ipswich fans didn't like was Chris was constantly kind of taking the piss. He doesn't hate Ipswich fans. Let's get that straight out. But yeah, it was a good podcast. It's done good views. You were fantastic. And I think if you would have been more of a dick, it would have actually gone down. Chris would have got less views because he was just giving Ipswich pelters. But as you said, having not beaten us for 10 years, it would be very tough to come on our channel and give us stick. So
I've got no ammo.
Well, exactly. And if you would have come on and done that, you would have got a ton of stick off Ipswich fans. If Chris wouldn't have laid into you, he would have got a ton of stick off Norwich fans. So, look, no one was going to win. I think it was a really good podcast. But I do just want to get out there that Chris isn't an idiot. He's a top bloke, and just give him a bit of slack.
And just to break the fourth wall, before the podcast happened, that handshake thing was a work. He said before, I'm not going to shake your hand at the front. I'm going to shake it at the end. So I know a lot of people like turned off after he didn't shake my hand. If you watched until the end, he shook my hand at the end. So, and he's not here to defend himself. We spoke about this. So I think you're going to speak about it on Monday, aren't you?
Yeah, we're going to, and hopefully, if you don't mind, maybe coming back on, it will be very interesting to see the change in kind of narrative and going into the game. and then after the game, who knows what the result will be. So it'll be an interesting one, but I'm sure Chris will defend himself. He didn't get loads of stick. He got a few comments. Look, it's an Norwich versus Ipswich game. There's going to be conflict of interests here. But yeah, maybe the tone in which we operated in was slightly ill-judged. And hopefully we get that right next time.
And I've never been so popular with Norwich fans. No, seriously, I've got so
weird,
many tweets from Norwich fans saying, "Oh, enjoyed the podcast and whatnot." So where can everybody find it? Because like you said, I think it's a great show. So
it's on my YouTube channel, Talk Norwich City. If you want to listen to it on iTunes, type in the TNC podcast and you can find it there. And actually, picking up on your point, we actually got a lot of praise from Ipswich fans. As much as there was hate, we got a lot of praise. So to everyone who did listen,
you did.
Well, yeah, Chris did a bit, to be fair, as well. But to everyone who did stick it out and listen, I do fully appreciate it, because I know as an Ipswich fan watching some Norwich fans, it's probably not the easiest. But to everyone who did watch it through and enjoyed it, thank you very much.
Wonderful. Should we talk about football?
Yeah, let's do that, shall we? Yeah, that's probably wise.
Can I say the rudest thing on that podcast that happened is I called you Jake at one point.
I've been called worse.
Have you? I was like, I went to journalism college, and that was like the number one journalism rule. If you get someone's name wrong, you're absolutely done. So we did. If anyone listens to the first podcast you did with us, you talked all about Fark coming. You talked about Alex Neil. You talked about the first 2 months, which was very good, because going into the first game, I got the stats. It was 22nd October. Norwich had won 5 and drawn 3 of the previous 8. They were on a superb run, and very possession heavy. Top stats in the division. Reed and Tribal and the team for passing and whatnot. I know we did this a bit on Monday, but can you just give me your memories of the first game, going into it, and how it played out? Obviously 1-0 win back in October.
Yeah, first of all, I love that you come more clued up about Norwich than I do. I've kind of completely forgotten the run of form. It feels ages ago since that derby, and it was strange going into it, because obviously we were under a new regime. There was so much change over the summer. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but I think there was 45 ins and outs. So naturally, there's going to be a bit of upheaval at the club. Our whole backroom staff had gone. We'd got new in. So I think from a Norwich fans' point of view, and I think I'm right in saying, or speaking for all Norwich fans, we did think that this could be the time in which this run of wins or not being beaten against you guys was going to end. You guys were in brilliant form. You'd started the season really well. It looked like Mick McCarthy had, especially your attacking line, really fire, and you looked like a different team to what we'd seen in previous seasons. I know you got to the playoffs a couple of seasons before that and finished 7th, but it just felt different at Ipswich. It felt a little bit more exciting. It felt like a little bit of a new era. And on the other hand, there's Norwich. Although we were going into that in good form, we had a lot of players who hadn't played in a derby before. We had a manager who'd never played in a derby. We didn't know how it was going to turn out. So naturally, we were a little bit uneasy, but it was also quite exciting, and it still is very exciting. In terms of the actual game, I can remember the first half being very much dominated by Ipswich. I think Waghorn had a great chance. McGoldrick had a header. Knudsen hit the post. But as soon as Knudsen hit the post, I felt, although you had a few more chances after that.
That was like after 4 minutes or something,
it
wasn't it? It was literally our first attack, wasn't it?
But it was strange, because as soon as he hit the post, I thought, right, we're winning this game, because it felt like it just wasn't going to be your day. And there'd been a lot of hype, and I can remember you kind of going on about, well, Garner's going to be really up for this because he's that kind of player. He's a derby player. Waghorn's going to be up for it. McGoldrick's got experience, and as soon as Knudsen hit the post, he'd scored in the previous 2 derbies. I thought, this is ours now. And although it kind of swayed either way, as soon as we got that goal, and it was that spark of quality from Maddison that we've seen all season, and ultimately that was the difference. I don't think we ever looked in doubt, and the celebrations from our players at the end showed how much it meant, and Farkas was really high of praise. But let's not forget, after that Ipswich game, we played it on the Sunday. We then went back to Colney and put in a full training session after that derby ahead of the Arsenal game on the Tuesday, and then after that we went on a horrific run. So that Ipswich game, we learnt a lot of lessons, not only from the win, But in terms of the preparation after that game, and a lot of players were saying how unhappy they were in terms of the training regimes. And then we went on that bad run of form that took us down to like 13th place, and we've kind of stayed there ever since. So a lot has changed. I think we've learned a lot from that. But still, we're in a situation where we don't really know what to expect, and that's exciting and also quite uneasing at the same time.
There's a lot of complaints from the Ipswich fans. This where was the passion, where was the fight after Maddison scored? Did you said, oh, and then we thought it was ours. Did you think we surrendered a bit limply?
I think that whole "where's the passion, where's the fight" is a very lazy argument to use. I mean, I've used it in previous encounters, but I don't think players ever really dip in terms of their passion or fight. I just think maybe they were slightly tired, maybe the tactics weren't right. I think I'm not going to slag Ipswich off, because I think tactically that day we were spot on, and tactically defensively this season we've been very good. I think we've kept 12 league clean sheets, only the second best behind Wolves, who are kind of a Premier League team anyway, so that doesn't really count. But I can remember Grant Hanley coming on, and I think he'd only played a couple of substitute appearances before that. I think it was Close who went off injured, or Zimmerman, and Hanley came in and done a fantastic job that day. So Norwich were very well drilled defensively, and we have been all season. So yeah, maybe you could have gone for it a bit more, but if you go for it, you're exposed at the back. And when we had Yannick Vilschot on that day running at you, Stiepermann was very high up the pitch, and naturally James Maddison's going to create carnage. So it's not easy, and as an Ipswich fan, you haven't got the most attackingly minded manager, and if you're going to win games, it's going to be by fine margins, and by setting up well and being well drilled. And I just think that day we had a little bit more.
No, I think you nailed it, to be honest. So you already mentioned it, because literally from that Ipswich game, and we're kind of sitting there afterwards depressed, thinking, oh, they beat us again. We're now going to drop down the table, and off they go. They've made another great hire, and they're now going to go in for another playoff season. And it really went badly wrong. So 11 games. This is going up to Christmas Day. 11 games, 1 win, 3 draws, and 7 defeats. So instead of, are you going to finish 4th or 5th or even higher? Was it 13th? Was that the lowest it went?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And they're also kind of even in the back of my head, I'm the biggest Daniel Fark fan. I was thinking, are we going to be in a relegation scrap this season? Because it did feel that bad at times.
What happened?
Nothing really changed that drastically. I think the wins we picked up before that were by very fine margins, and we were playing a risky style of football in terms of holding a lot of the ball, but not being that great going forwards. We really struggled, and we have done, especially at home this season, of breaking teams down. And the games we were winning before that, as I said, were by very fine margins. And that pattern has continued through the season, but we've kind of developed a bit tactically since then. There was also a hell of a lot of Tuesday, Saturday games that I just don't think Daniel Farke was prepared for. And I think come the end of the season, when we've had a bit of time to reflect, we'll look back at that period, and Farke's naivety and slight championship inexperience showed there, because he was working the players so hard. We had Russ Martin on at the start of the season, who said, they're doing 2 sessions a day. It's the perfect example to show how hard he was working them players after an East Anglian Derby where we put in everything, to then go back to Colney and put in another training session and have 24 hours rest before our next game. So mentally we were drained, physically we were drained. We probably didn't have as much talent as we should have done. The likes of James Husband were playing, who has since been dropped. Stiepermann didn't go on a great run. I think we found the players that weren't going to fit in quite quickly. And once you get in a rut, as you'll know, it's very tough to break out of, especially when your home form isn't great. So, and that was a really tough time for Farke, because he was new to the club. He's got new players, and he's suddenly losing games. And naturally, as fans, when you're 13th in the table and you're playing dire football, you're going to turn on your manager. Thankfully, since then, he's reined fans back in. But it was a tough time for Norwich, and it's testament to Farke, and it's testament to his players that they've come back from it, and come back with it with quite high morale as well.
Very good. I mean, I saw the end of it because my sister lives in Norwich, so I went to the Norwich Brentford game, and there was a lot of booing and joining in with the "You're effing
Yeah,
piss"
yeah,
chant at the end of that game. You kind of already mentioned it. So since Boxing Day, I went to Birmingham and won on Boxing Day. Um, 10 games, 5 wins, 5 draws, 1 defeat. Is there any coincidence? I mean, it's funny you should mention Russ Martin, Naismith, Wiltshire. I mean, you'll fill me in. Is it any coincidence that so he takes the job, he
yeah,
beds in, he
yeah.
figures out the league, and then in January there's a bit of a clear out really, or another, like switching out. Is it any coincidence that do you think he says, right, these guys I don't want these guys, and this is what I'm going to go forward with. Do you think that's what switched the results back?
Yeah, I think naturally as a football fan, you want to be seeing patterns. So obviously it'd be great if you got a pattern of wins or draws and not going and staying unbeaten. That means you're doing well. And if you're seeing patterns of losing, that means that something is clearly wrong and we need to change. What is always unsettling for me, and it's a reason I didn't really like Alex Neil that much in his later stages, is it was so inconsistent. So we'd go 7-1 at home, 2-0 defeat away from home. You didn't really know what was going wrong because it was so different every week. At least with Farker, it's been a block of wins or a block of draws. The football has remained the same. He's got a clear philosophy. And through that period of time in which we were losing games, it was because, one, I don't think we were fit enough. We weren't tactically aware enough, and we hadn't adapted to the Championship well enough. And we've learned from that since. And since Boxing Day, I think, one, we had a decent January transfer window, as you say there. We let go of Russ, Jerome, Naismith, Vilscott, players who clearly, I haven't got any hard feelings against them, but didn't want to adapt to
You were
Farker's way
quite
of
high
playing.
on Vilchet though, weren't you?
I love Yannick Vilchet. I think we made the wrong decision letting him go. But if he's not a Daniel Farker player, I have full trust in Farker. I think Vilchet's a great player. I think he'll do very well at Cardiff, and there's a reason why Warnock has taken him on in clearly an automatic promotion race. So I'll never speak lowly of Vilchet, and he done very well at Portman Road.
Yeah, very good first half. Yeah.
He did, but um, yeah, I think just with time, Farkas had more time to get the players he wants to in. Madison's been brilliant, which has won the majority of our games. And the defence has been exceptional as well. And that's so nice to say as an Norwich fan, because for years we've either been relegated or haven't performed well in the Championship because of a shit defence. And it's very nice looking at Hanley, Zimmerman, Closer, Lewis and Pinto and going, yeah, we're set, we're fine. If we score one goal, that should be enough. So it's taken time naturally when you let go of, when there's 45 players coming out, when you've got a manager who's never managed in English football, you've got half your team who've never played in English football. It's going to take time to adapt. And as football fans, we don't have patience. So it's hard to get used to that. But with time, I think we've seen progression, and that's all you can really ask for as a football fan.
I've got two things to come back. One is, do you think there was pressure from money people because I assume people like Jerome and Naismith were high earners. So do you think
Yeah.
there was pressure from there? And two, did he, because you're playing three at the back now, did that change at some point after Christmas?
Well, I think three at the plan was always what Farker wanted to play. He played it out in Germany and he played it on the opening day against Fulham, but we had Husband on the left and Russ Martin on the right, and it just didn't work. And we were very exposed. And we had Marcel Franca in the centre back, who's since been let go on loan. So it was clear the system he wanted to play was three at the back / five at the back with the wing backs, whatever you want to call it. And it just didn't work, and he got a bit flustered and he had to change. As is with English football, it's very reactive, and he did react, and I think he'd probably regret that now. But now he's found that system that works. It's working really nicely. In terms of the more senior players, so Russ, Jerome, I think money does come into factor, although I still think we're probably paying the majority of, well, I definitely know we're paying the majority of Naismith's wages, which is a bloody lot, and we're probably still paying the majority of Russ's wages. In terms of Jerome, he didn't like the training standards, the training structure he was let go of. I think Farker actually quite liked Jerome. But look, the Naismiths of the world, the Matt Jarvises of the world, we are still having to pay their wages, and it's still having a detrimental impact on our football club because of our horrific recruitment strategy, which meant we were relegated from the Premier League on countless occasions, and we're still, having to chase our tail on that, and it's because we've had to sell big assets and not really bring that much in terms of money wise. So yeah, it's been tough, but when you make mistakes, it's always going to come and bite you, I think.
Great stuff. Let's talk players then. I mean, we're going to get one incredibly predictable answer for this, but 3 Norwich players you want our guys to, kind of have a look out for on Sunday.
I'll say Maddison. I'm not going to bang on about him anymore. You're probably bored of that name. Maddison, it's going to be really interesting, actually. And we spoke a bit about him on our podcast, didn't we? Nelson Oliveira. What Nelson Oliveira are we going to see? Are we going to see the man who I've criticised a lot in recent weeks, the man who hasn't scored since, I think, mid-December? I think that did he score against Brentford really late on a consolation? I think that was his last goal, actually. Yeah, I think that was. Or it may have been Sheffield Wednesday. Anyway, it's been a while. But it just feels written in the script that he's going to bag a goal at the weekend. There's something about him that still says to me he will score goals for Norwich City. But will he flip? He's got a very strange temper. You just don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see. I assume, will it be Chambers marking him, or
it'll either be Chambers or Carter Vickers. I don't know which way around they'll do that, because it'll only be him on his own with one spare guy, and then Murphy and who's going to come in from the Maddison will come in from behind, won't he? Not from the side.
I'm not really sure, but if I'm Mick McCarthy and I'm saying to Luke Chambers before the game, you go out there and you get in the head of Nelson Oliveira. Because Jack, if you get in his head...
Sorry to interrupt. That will be Garner's job on the corners, though. I bet you what you like. Garner's the free man on the edge of the 6-yard box. He's horrible, I mean, I love him because he plays for us. But,
yeah. Well, you need them players, and you need them players to get into players' heads. On the flip side, I think I saw a quote from Carriol today saying if he scores, he'll be sent off for the celebration or something. It's players like that who Hanley will absolutely love because he knows he'll be able to get in ahead of them. So you need players like Grant Hanley and your Joe Garners who will get in players' heads and will say comments that maybe are slightly unsavoury. But that's what the derby's about. So Nelson is going to be a really interesting one to watch. I'm not sure if he'll have an impact. He might have a massive impact. The other one, I think, Angus Gunn. He is an exceptional goalkeeper. And I know we done our combined 11 and you put your lad in goal.
Good fun debate that, though, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And Bielkowski, is it? Yeah. I always butcher his pronoun. I think he's a great keeper, but it's very hard to argue he's a better keeper than Angus Gunn. 12 clean sheets in his first professional season. He will go to the top, and I think a player like Angus, who's from Norwich, was a Norwich City season ticket holder, is a Norwich City fan, will be so up for this game, and he will have a big impact, I think.
Great stuff. So I've got the team that started against Derby. Let's run through this, and you tell me how close you think it will be on Saturday. So I'm assuming it's Gunn in goal. Then the back three is Zimmerman, Closer, Hanley, Lewis left wing back, Reed right wing back. And you're going to have to smarten me up here. I assume Leitner and Tetty are sitting. I don't know how this front three works. Oliveira, Maddison, Murphy. First of all, explain how that's going to work and how close you think it's going to be on Sunday.
I think it'll be very similar. I think the only question in terms of rotation is whether Reed stays in at right wing back. He's not a right wing back, but he's fitted in quite nicely there. Pinto is now fit. He's our captain. Farkas got a massive call there because Reed's done quite well, and we've played well the last couple of games. So you drop Reed, you put Pinto in, who isn't the best defensively, but he's our captain. I'm not so sure. I think the team will be very similar. So it's Gunn in goal, as you say, defence, Zimmerman close, Hanley at the back, Lewis at the left, Reed or Pinto at the right. Leitner and Tete sitting, Leitner slightly more advanced, and then it's very kind of floaty going forward. So you've got Murphy everywhere, Maddison everywhere, and Nelson as a sort of target man type style. Possible replacement, Murphy might be pulled out, Anulad Hernandez might be put in. He's a very quick winger. might be
Is he the
slightly
chap
early.
you posted the video of, the really, really lightning quick guy?
Yeah, he's
Okay,
very
yeah.
quick. He's very quick, but we've seen 15 minutes of him, so I think it'd be very bold for Farkas to stick him in the deep end against Ipswich. But I think that team will pretty much be what we play against you guys.
I'm just thinking about it. Is there any chance for Fark to show his intent? Because if I'm wanting to keep the ball, I quite like the idea of a centre midfielder playing right wing back. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, the only reason Reed is playing there is because we don't have a replacement, and it
Right.
shows the slight lack of squad depth that we've got, especially at right back. So I don't think that was a tactical move. It was a desperate move and a desperate move that kind of worked. And Reed's a classy player, but yeah, as you say, we'll try and play a possession-based style of football. But it's strange looking at that formation because it's not typically a formation used to hold onto the ball. It looks on paper quite defensive. In
Oh
reality,
no, Wolves do it, Jack, and that's the most attacking team I've seen. They end up with one, because you can actually push a centre back forward, one centre back, one wing back, and one wide guy, all
yeah.
pummeling you down either side. So if it's done that way, it's massively attacking, isn't it?
Yeah, but on paper, when you've got essentially five defenders on the pitch and two central defensive midfielders, it could also have, the potential to be very defensive. But
Depends
as
who
you
your manager
say,
is, doesn't it?
that's very true. And early on in the season, Farker was probably quite a defensive manager, and we've scored, I think, the fourth lowest amount of goals in the league this season, only ahead of Burton, who are pretty terrible, Birmingham, and I think Sunderland. So, that doesn't read great on paper. But in terms, it's funny you say about the centre back pushing forward. Ever since the Chelsea game away, where Tim Close delivered the most delicious cross for Jamal Lewis, Closer has essentially been playing as a striker, and he's just absolutely carefree. And he's also been trying to deliver the exact same cross to absolutely no avail for the past 4 weeks. And I think fans started to lose their patience as the ball sails into the NMP stand. So yeah, bless him. I do love Tim Close, but I think that was a bit of luck, that cross.
The one that makes me laugh is Keogh for Derby. I think Keogh's got it in his contract that once per game he has to do a Rio Ferdinand, Franz Beckenbauer type run. Every time I've seen him play, he's tried at one point to just, and I'm like, bless him, and he trots back afterwards. But I think he's got a couple of assists. If you're Mick McCarthy, would you not want Bersant Selena going against Harrison Reed if he's not a right wing, not a proper kind of bespoke defender?
100%. I really like Selena. The times I've watched him this season, I think he's looked exceptional. And it's strange that McCarthy probably earlier on in his loan didn't play him more than he did. And was it one of the away games he got a hell of a lot of stick after the game,
Yeah,
McCarthy, for
so
not playing Selena?
it was at Burton, and
That's it.
God, this is one of the embarrassing things that I couldn't defend on your podcast. So all the fans are chanting, "Bring on Selena." Mick waits and waits and waits. He brings him on. He puts a free kick in the top corner, and we win 2-1. And then after he says, "Just because they chanted, that wasn't why I brought him on. In
Yeah.
fact, I'm less likely to bring him on."
Yeah.
And it's like, what you do? I can't take credit for this comment because I read it on my Twitter, but do you suffer without someone like Jerome? Because you've had players that have bullied us, Bradley
Mm,
Johnson, Cameron Jerome, your power players,
yeah.
Grant Holt, Malky Mackay, going back years and years with that. But Oliveira is not quite like that. Are you going to suffer, excuse me, sorry, from not having that bully guy up front?
I'm not sure. I think the big frustration from Norwich fans this season is we haven't had that focal point going forwards, and I think that's why we brought in this chap called Dennis Sobrani from Germany, because he's a bit more of a focal point. He's a bit taller, he's a bit stronger, and the way in which we've played this season has sometimes relied on Oliveira to hold the ball up to allow us to get forward, and he hasn't done that very well. And it's tough in this league to play as a lone striker when you don't really have tons of support behind you. But it's very different the way we're playing this season. We're relying on a system to succeed rather than an individual. So in previous seasons, we've relied on Grant Holt, we've relied on Wes Hoolahan, we've fitted a team around individual players. This time, we rely on everyone to contribute, and if they don't, we're not going to succeed. So I don't think it's more of an individualistic type look at things now. It's more of that system, and it's a very continental style of playing football. So it's less about a hero to step forward, and it's more about.
Even with Maddison though.
I mean, them
From the
sparks.
outside, that looks like a star player who's head and shoulders above everybody else.
But it's not a bully, is it? And I think, yeah, of course, we rely on Maddison's quality, and if you're going to do well in the Championship, you do need them sparks of quality. And I think Maddison's gone above expectations this season. But in terms of a bully, your Bradley Johnson, your Grant Hart, your Jerome, as you spoke about, we don't have that, and I don't think the system we're playing requires that anymore.
No, fair comment. And how do you see it playing out?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I don't think there's going to be many goals. I don't think there'll ever be many goals against the Mick McCarthy side, as we said. And I think the days of the 4-1s, the 5-1s have gone. I think, and I don't think we actually said it on our podcast on Monday, I think first goal wins it, whether that be for Ipswich or Norwich. If Ipswich get the first goal, you'll sit back. We struggle to break teams down. If we score first, you guys will sit back, and you're definitely not going to score against our defence that's looked fairly solid unless you get a scrappy corner or something. But I think it's going to be low scoring. I hope Norwich come out the blocks early doors. Look, you're making me nervous. I came into this feeling good, and naturally,
it's horrible, isn't it?
I've talked myself. Yeah. I don't know. Momentum, form says we should win this. On paper, we should probably win this. If we look at the league table, you should win it. You're above us.
Goal difference, Jack. Goal difference.
But you're still above us. Hold that as a slight hint of optimism.
I'll take that at the end of the season. Yeah.
But I don't know. I think we should probably win it. But as you can probably tell from the conviction in my voice, I'm not feeling overly confident, as I never do going into a derby. Okay,
you ready for some questions?
I'm not sure, am I? I've read some of them.
Oh, good. You're well prepared. Right. Oh, I'm scrolling right down. Which player would you rather? This is at Wonderful Waggy. Which player would you rather have at your club, Nelson Oliveira or Joe Garner?
I think probably this season Garner. I think he'd probably fit our system slightly more. And I do like Nelson, but I question his attitude at times. I question his work rate at times. I think Oliveira is probably a slightly better player than Garner, but Garner's a Championship footballer. He'll get you goals, and he certainly puts bloody work in. So I think if we wanted to fit a player into a system, probably Garner would have suited us more this season, I reckon.
Jack, when you see that he's got 10 goals, believe me, there's games that poor guy has played where he's had 2 lumping Championship centre-halves against him. He's just had the ball booted at him, shoulder height, all game. So he's done really well to get those.
Yeah, definitely. And in the system you play, it's even tougher to score. If he was at Norwich,
the chances go to the inverted forwards, not the actual focal point, don't they?
I mean, it weren't a lot of them goals early doors though. Not that that's discrediting his goals, but didn't his and Wag?
It was Waghorn's all came in one go. When Waghorn's dried up, he did score like 4 games in a row from Waghorn free kicks or corners. Okay. So look out for that on Sunday.
But it is interesting, if you say that he scored 10 goals, if he was playing for Norwich, he'd be our joint top scorer with that amount of goals, and probably in a slightly more free-flowing system as well.
I would think he would have scored more for Norwich, because I think he would have got more sensible balls, not ones booted.
Yeah, I like Garner. I think he's a good player. I think he's a player you need in a squad for a derby game. I do like him.
And you're going to watch him on Sunday, and you're going to think that guy's going to get sent off, but he won't. He knows exactly how to play right on the edge of winding up the centre-halves. Anyway, this is at Bielkowski, not Bart, I assume. Do you actually think you can get in the playoffs?
I think there's a very small chance. I'm not a stat man, but I did see someone say if we continue our run of form in terms of points per game over the past 10, it would probably historically get us into the playoffs in terms of the amount of points you've needed in previous seasons. So.
1.9, yeah, that would work all year. Yeah.
So I mean, if you're looking at it very kind of raw statistics, yes, we could get in the playoff. Do I think it will happen? No.
Okay. I think you might have already taken this, but we'll read it. Joshua Tractor Boy, who does he think is the better keeper, Bielkowski or Gunn?
Gunn.
This is at McLean Jack. If you didn't have the same setup as Huddersfield had, do you think Fark would still be in a job, considering fans were calling for his head at Christmas?
Good question. I suppose, yeah, we have
And you
pretty
have
much.
been pretty ruthless. Sorry to interrupt. You have been pretty ruthless with your. I mean, people sometimes wish Ipswich would take the Norwich approach. Sometimes they move very quickly to change the manager, don't they?
Yeah, over the past, yeah, I mean, Houghton, Adams, Neil, Irvine for a bit, and then of course Farkas. So we have gone through managers, and I think it's nice now. And I don't think it's necessarily been the managers' faults in previous campaigns. It's been above them in terms of not really having a plan and that descending down to the pitch. And at least now we do have a clear plan that's being communicated to the fans. So I think that even in times of disarray on the pitch, it does help knowing that okay, we do have a long-term plan. At least we're trying to move forwards. I think the whole Huddersfield model we have literally copied. We've got the man who put that plan in place at Huddersfield, so naturally that's going to evolve at Norwich. And I think seeing how well Huddersfield have done, although they haven't done that great this season, that does give a little bit of hope to Norwich fans that if we replicate that, we'll be in a good place. Let's also not forget though that Huddersfield have a lot more money than we do. So it will be a little bit easier. And also Huddersfield struggled in their first season under Wagner. So yeah, I don't think Farkas' job was ever on the line. Maybe some fans probably wanted him to go, but I don't think from a board level his job was ever in doubt, and I don't think it will be unless it goes horrifically wrong because there is a long-term plan in place. But seeing this kind of German European model work at other clubs, I would have thought does give optimism to fans. Yeah.
At Tractor Bajna, who has had more passion, Grant Holt or Luke Chambers?
I suppose it was easier for Holt to show his passion because he was more successful in the derbies. I know you guys love Chambers, and I know why. He's a proper club man, and it's always nice having a bit of a character at the club, and it's always nice for fans to have a player kind of disrespecting the other, the team across the border as he done. I don't think it helped that comment from Chambers in the previous clash when he was kind of commenting on Nelson, and as a captain you would have thought he would have been slightly more self-aware than that, but I get why you like Chambers. I'm sure you'd all say he's more passionate than Holt, but Holt scored a lot of goals against Ipswich and he loved Norwich, and he was just a bit of a proper kind of shithouse footballer, wasn't he? He was just bundling balls over the line and just a bit of a non-traditional
and
striker,
miraculously falling down whenever he got touched as well.
Considering the size of it, he did go down quite easily, didn't he? That's
he was both
saying.
Very powerful and very fragile at the same time, wasn't he?
He was indeed.
I don't know what Lloyd means, but it's a good question. I don't know whether he means this weekend or generally. Would you prefer to be playing at Carrow Road or Portman Road? I think that might be a reference to your home form this season.
Yeah, that's a good point. Probably.
You love Portman Road.
We do, and probably we would prefer to be playing away. It's strange, isn't it? Is the home crowd the benefit, or is the home crowd the pressure? And I think we have probably played with a little bit of the shackles on and under a bit of pressure at home, because there is that level of expectation at Carrow Road that we want to see this free-flowing style of football and we should be beating every team. I mean, in reality, we're a mid-table championship side and that's not going to happen anymore. And not that that's ever really happened at Carrow Road. But I think at Portman Road, we did come to you with a sense of freedom and a sense of we've got nothing to lose almost, although we did have a lot to lose. It's always slightly, I think, easier to go away from home, and we've done better away from home, and I think our style of football suits away grounds more because we hit teams on the counter a little bit more, and that allows us to. So this season, I'd probably say we're favourites more at Portman Road, which is a strange answer to give, I think.
And it's really interesting when you say, is the home side the pressure or what have you. I think Norwich are very good at playing on the Ipswich fans in Portman Road's anxiety. Do you know what I mean? I think they kind of enjoy it, don't they? This is at Suffolk Boy 82. Do you think Norwich missed a trick when they were last in the Prem to invest a bit more? There were 11 poor teams that year in the Premier League. I mean, you mentioned the kind of purchasing strategy.
Yeah, it was never a sense of a lack of investment. We spent a lot of money, but the key point here is we've wasted a hell of a lot of money, and it does sicken me as a Norwich fan. I think I think with football you can't, we overanalyze everything, and sometimes things just happen. and you can't. Some things you don't have control over. But that season in particular, we didn't have a plan. I don't think we expected to get where we were as quick as we did, and because of that, we wasted a lot of money on players that didn't work out. Your Stephen Naismiths, your Ricky Van Wolfswinkels, your Leroy Furts.
Van Wolfswinkel.
I mean, you look there, and if you're looking at £40 million worth of talent that we wasted, so it's never been a lack of investment. We put our money on the line and we spent all we could. It was the lack of planning and the the recruitment that ultimately let us down.
This is Adam Flatt. If you could pick one Ipswich player from history to play for Norwich, who would it be? And can I add one? Which player, if you had to take one from the current team, and you're not allowed to choose Selena because he doesn't belong to us.
Okay.
So one from history and one from the current team. You know, who could slot into your Norwich team?
I'd take Garner. I do like Garner, and Ipswich fans never agree with me on this, but I've always liked him. Freddie Sears. I do like Freddie Sears, and I'm not sure if he's any good this season, but I've watched him a lot over the kind of ever since sort of Colchester days. I just like his style of football. He's my kind of footballer, so I do like Sears. In history, wow, Kieran Dyer maybe, a Darren Bent. I mean, you've had some really decent players even in recent history. So in my lifetime, I loved Kieran Dyer.
Dyer was a natural.
Matt Holland as well, actually.
Great player.
On a personal level, I've met Matt a few times. He's a really nice bloke. So if I'm going out for a beer with someone, it'd be with Matt Holland.
This is quite a mocking one, but it's going to give you a chance to talk about cup football. Do Norwich have any more matches for cup runs coming up? Maybe taking Chelsea to penalties or replay? Well, I'm going to stand up for you here because Ipswich's cup record is just pathetic and haven't won a cup game for about a decade, despite all this glory we talk about our 78 FA Cup win. How was it in the same year going to Arsenal and Chelsea? Because if that was Ipswich, we would have done it. We would have had thousands of people, thousands of these lapsed fans that don't come to the home games anymore would have all been down there, wouldn't they? How were those?
Yeah.
How were those trips?
Well, the Arsenal game was in half term, so I think we took about 9,000 down on that night. So it was a good turnout and it was a good night for the club. We were so close to winning as well. We played well, and Farkas teams, from what we've seen, played better against Premier League teams, which is more suited to. I think that's the style of football in which he plays. The Chelsea game was brilliant. Jamal Lewis, our 19-year-old, making his, he'd only played like a couple of games before that, scoring a header in front of us in the 95th minute from a Tim Close cross. I mean that isn't written in the script, is it? And it was beautiful. I was down in London for work actually, so it just all worked perfectly well. It was really good, and them kind of games are ones that live in the memory. And I know cup competitions don't hold as much value anymore because the league is where the priorities are, and I do understand that. To give Farkas credit, he puts out seriously strong sides in cup competitions, and it has had a detrimental effect on our league form. The Arsenal, there's no kind of coincidence that our poor run of form came after that Arsenal game, and we also lost the game after the Chelsea game because we'd played 120 minutes of football against a Premier League side. So yeah, I mean, it's had its detrimental impact. It's certainly been fun. In terms of if we want to touch on that game about the whole Inter Milan thing, it is a bit tin pot, but it is for charity, so it's all fun and games, and it's for a good cause. But it is a little bit tin pot.
I think you covered this. This is wonderful, Waggy again. Is he happy that they let Wildschut go out on loan? He absolutely tore Spence apart when they played in the reverse fixture in October.
I really like Yannick Wildschut, and I think that's an unpopular opinion to hold as a Norwich fan. I don't think many Norwich fans rated him. And there was this, well, it wasn't a rumour, it was fact that we'd paid £7 million for him. About £4 million of that were add-ons that we never actually paid. So he wasn't as much as people thought he was. £3 million for average championship football is probably still a lot of money, but I liked him. He was direct. I think he was what we lacked in that bad run of form. He gets at players, he puts defenders on the back foot. He had a great run, and the run which created the goal for Maddison against Portman Road. So I like Yannick Wildschut. I think from Farkas' point of view, he didn't contribute enough defensively. his work rate maybe wasn't enough, and his end product, even as a fan, wasn't great. So I think he'll do fantastically well at Cardiff. And I can remember, wasn't it when he was at Wigan, he tore you to shreds as
Oh no, it was
well?
Chambers. Oh, it was horrible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I think
he's
he
a
did
good
like
player.
9 dribbles in that game or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
And is that done? He won't come back at the end of the season?
Well, he's only on loan, so I mean, he could come back at the end of the season. I don't think Farker probably wants him to, but who knows? Who knows?
Tricky McTrickerson. Sheffield United are I can't say this. Let's try again. Sheffield United are our Norwich of the North. Do you have an Ipswich of the North equivalent? So another team that you have a grudge match. We had amazing matches
Okay.
against Sheffield United in the late 90s, and like Don Hutchison was the same as Grant Holt and Tarico to them. Is there another grudge match for Norwich?
It's funny you say that. Actually, it's probably been Sheffield United this season. Chris Wilder lost his head when we played them and beat them at Bramall Lane, and then they came to us, beat us at Carrow Road, and Wilder was giving it real beans to the Norwich fans after the game. I quite like Chris Wilder actually. He's a bit of a dick, but he's their dick, and he's a proper kind of British manager, isn't he? But Wolves, obviously, the whole Kevin Muscat tackle back in the day.
Oh, on Bellamy.
Yeah, it was
Muscat
horrible.
scored in the last minute against us this season. Everybody hates Kevin Muscat, don't
Yeah,
they?
but bit of a dick. And I love Craig Bellamy, so obviously I hold a bit of a grudge there. Yeah, so probably Wolves and Sheffield United, I reckon.
Sure. This is Mullet. Does failure to win or even finish way above us only prove that Fark is indeed a managerial fraud and a cheap attempt by your board to placate you lot with last year's fairy tale? Is he the German equivalent of Magic Beans? Can I just say I know Mullet, and he's not a Mickey taker. That'll be a serious
Okay.
a serious one.
So if let's touch on the whole managerial fraud thing. Isn't a fraud something when you're
Someone
kind of
purports to be something that they're not.
well, Farker, I don't think that's ever been reported. We knew it was a gamble. He was managing a youth team last season, so I don't think we've been sold a wrong description of someone. And if anything, we've sold ourselves lies in terms of bigging him up a lot. I think he's a great manager. I think he's a great man. I think he'll take us into good things. What was the other question? If we don't finish miraculously above you,
Yeah, and
I think we've got. I think as Norwich fans, we've got to be realistic of where we're at. Are we that much better than you? No, we're not. We are where we are in the league because we haven't played great football this season, and where you are in the league is because I think that's probably where you deserve to be. So I think there's a lot of self-entitlement that knocks about with Norwich fans, probably because of our recent history in the Premier League. But if we really want to strip things back, we're a mid-table championship club, and that hurts me to say it, but that's what we are.
this is great stuff. Are you okay to do a few more?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. And this is something that Chris said on the podcast. Do they seriously think that Maddison is better than Jack Wilshere? Now, I didn't respond to that, but if you watch my eyebrows go up when he said that, so this is not your hill to die on. But what do you think?
Yeah, so Chris wrote it in in our paper, the EDP, and the headline was I think the headline they did
Pesky
stitch him up.
sub-editor.
To be fair, they did stitch him up because he didn't actually touch on it that much. What Chris was saying was that he has the potential to be better than Wilshere, and it kind of got edited in the fact that he's better than Jack Wilshere. Obviously, Jack. To be fair, Maddison, I think, does have the potential to be a top Premier League footballer. Of course, that all depends on his next 3 years of development. But if he continues in the current vein of form, he will be a top Premier League footballer. And I think even Ipswich fans could admit that.
Oh, absolutely.
The whole Wilshere comment, even Chris got, bless him, he got a ton of stick for that. He did get stitched up when it's a full page spread in the back page. Maddison is better than Wilshere. It's probably not ideal. But yeah, I think he's got the potential to be better than him, for sure.
You've done so well there. You handled that like a true
It
gem.
was a proper politician's answer.
It was
Wasn't
great.
it?
Jonathan Powell. Norwich are obviously in a much stronger position than Town in terms of squad and finances. Do you find it concerning that we're level on points despite all these advantages? Also, do you think there may be a fire sale if you do not go up this season?
Fire sale, no, because I think we've got a core now that will stay in terms of the Germans we've brought in. Um, we've got players out on loan who can come back and do a job. Remy Matthews, Ben Godfrey, so that will fill in the gaps that we maybe lose in Alex Tete, Angus Gunnan, etc.
Isn't there a lad at Shrewsbury who's really
Ben
good
God,
as well?
we've
Oh,
got Ben
sorry.
Godfrey and Carlton Morris is there as well, who I don't think is that great personally. Norwich fans, you know, when you've got a youngster who kind of does well in his early years, and everyone really wants him to get in the team, and even if he's not performing, they still want him to get there. That's the kind of situation with Carlton Morris. I don't think he's a championship footballer personally. What was sorry, fire sale? No, I don't think that will happen. We'll obviously lose players, but I don't think we'll lose many. Sorry,
I think he was kind of suggesting that your squad's underperformed because the squad seems on paper better than ours.
yeah, it's probably underperformed a little bit, but you look at the teams in the Championship this season: Wolves, Villa, Middlesbrough, who haven't performed that well and have spent a lot of money. You've got even look at Sheffield Wednesday.
Oh,
They're a great squad, and
ludicrous, yeah.
you know they're scrapping with relegation. So I think on paper, yes, we should be doing better, but in the reality of things, the amount of transition that this club, not just squad, club has gone through, I don't think I don't think we've underperformed too much. It's been disappointing at times, but I think that was always going to be the case.
This is Paul, and he's outing me here. Can they sew because there's a bloody big hole in the parachute? Now, this is us being very childish on our podcast and doing parachute watch every time you lose. Because our big hope at the start, I think you debunked this on Monday. Our big hope was that in order for it to be, because since Lambert was there, and then the money, it's been so skewed. Our big
Yeah,
hope was that if you stay down this one more season and the parachute money goes, all of a sudden we might be able to beat you. So
yeah.
tell us the implications of the parachute, and is there a big tear in it? Can you fix it with gaffer tape?
You know what though? On a serious level, I do get that. That's quite an easy dig. I've never quite understood the whole parachute payment argument because we got to the Premier League without parachute payment money. You could quite easily be in the same position as we are if Marcus Evans invested and if you played good football. You know, it's not this elite kind of group that gets parachute payment money. You get that money because you've been to the Premier League. So I don't quite understand. I think it's probably jealousy from Ipswich fans that we got that money, but boy, we didn't use it well. So hold that close to your hearts. We wasted it. What were you going to say? You were going to chip in
No,
there, weren't
I think what it's used as, particularly from our chief exec, he always trots out. Oh, and there's 7 clubs who are receiving 20
But
million more than us this season. In
that's an easy way to defer blame for your board not investing. That's all that is. And I think when you have to put your responsibility on why you're not achieving onto other clubs, you have to look at yourselves. Why are we not achieving? Well, it's because we're not getting investment. And I do stand by the fact that Ipswich have been in the position they have been for the previous 16 seasons because of your ownership. I think you've got a good manager. I stick by that. I think you've probably got a decent core of players, but not a core of players that will get you promoted. If you added a few more players with a bit of money, you're going to be in the playoffs. So I don't think that detracting responsibility elsewhere is necessarily a wise move, and it hasn't done you proud because you are where you are. Financially, yeah, we are in a bit of a sticky situation, and that has meant we've had to sell players, and that has meant we've had to cut wages, and that has meant we've had to let go of the likes of Jacob Murphy, Johnny Howson, other players that I can't think of, and not reinvest that money to try and make up on the debt that has been caused because of paying Stephen Naismith, etc., 50 grand a week. So yeah, financially we're not in the best state. I think thankfully Stuart Webber done a fantastic job, him alongside Steve Stone, of at least securing our long-term future. So we're not in too bad of a situation, but we've certainly been in stronger places. And of course, yes, the parachute payment runs out this year, which will mean that we've probably got to make more cuts to the squad. So who knows?
You're going to get so much praise from Ipswich fans for that answer about whining about the parachute payments is just absolving yourself of responsibility. That was a great answer. Which of the, this is David, sorry, couple more, Jack. Which of the German player purchases are you most excited about?
I don't know if it counts because it's a loan move, but Leitner, I don't know how we got him. He played. I think he was in the squad for the Champions League final. He's won the Bundesliga. He was playing alongside Royce, Aubameyang,
This is
Lewandowski.
a Dortmund guy, is it?
So yeah, this is Leitner, who's got a very very similar story to Tribal in terms of incredibly highly rated as a youngster, and then went off the rails. So Farkas kind of brought him in and has given him a bit of love and a bit of a hug and that German beer probably and some currywurst, and just helped him along. And he looks a cut above, in all honesty. The same with Tribal as well, who's been really good, but he's unfortunately injured. I've just remembered that.
I
which
know
is,
he was. I thought he was really good in the game at Portman.
Yeah, he's a proper workhorse. He's a player that every champ. He's our N'Golo Kante. He's that kind of player. Zimmerman as well. I mean, coming from fourth division German football to being a top level championship defender is no easy feat, and he's done that very well. So we've had a few that have really worked, and we've also had a few that have flopped. Marcel Franke played 2 games and was loaned straight back. Stiepermann, I mean, he said he was born to score goals, but then he played at left back, so that made me slightly question where his responsibility
He sounds
lies.
like a confused individual, doesn't he?
Oh, 100%. He's played central attacking midfield, striker, left back, right back, and then came out in a press conference and said he's born to score goals. So
I remember your match experience after the Portman Road game, and you were like, "Yeah, I was terrified every time he got the ball." It's like he just
100%.
He's just going.
He got the ball and he didn't know. I don't think he knew what he wanted to do. But he has no care in the world. I'm sure he's a very happy man, and he gets his life in an orderly manner. A bit like Tim Close, he doesn't know where he wants to play. Apparently, he played as a winger when he was younger. I don't believe that. He's got his nose. I've never seen a nose as disjointed as his. Like, there's a reason we sing "He's big, he's Swiss, his nose is on the piss." That nose is horrific, but he's a lovely man.
Steve Agrizovic, maybe. Hey, Mick McCarthy's one, isn't? Yeah. It's an interesting one. This is Matt. Can you ask Jack, if Norwich had been in the Championship for 16 years, would their attendances be similar to ours? Because we do, and everyone needs. Thank you for retweeting our video. Watch our excellent video on this channel about the fan bases of both. And
I really like that, actually. I did really like that.
Is proven to be higher. Would it drop off in the same way ours has?
It's a good question, and I suppose the only way we'd find out is if we were in the Championship for 16 seasons and also gone through. I think the lack of what's the word I'm looking, the lack of intent from a board. I think it's all well and good saying you've been in the Championship for 16 seasons. What's the narrative behind that? Well, if I was an Ipswich fan, I probably wouldn't turn up, in all honesty. Or would I? I don't know, because football to me is more than the game. It's about seeing my mates. But if my mates aren't turning up, then I'm definitely not going. So I do get, and I think it is a proper easy dig for a Norwich fan to go at Ipswich's attendances. And I do sympathise with Ipswich fans in terms of what you've had to go through. I don't know if that makes me a bad Norwich fan if I'm sympathising with Ipswich fans, but I do see where you're coming from. We've been in League One and still pulled good attendances.
That's very true, isn't it?
But at the end of the day, we were playing League One with an exciting manager and players that we loved
all the time.
Exactly. So that's not a very good comparison. Probably, I think they dip. I don't know if they dip as what you've seen in recent weeks in terms of like the 13,000s, but and ticket prices as well. That's a huge factor, and you're paying a lot of money for Championship football as well as us. Let's not forget. I think we've got one of the highest season tickets in the league, if not the country.
Jack, you could have paid 53 quid. Aside from hospitality, you could have paid 53 quid to see Ipswich 0, Burton 0, with 13,000 people in the row. In the padded seats in the Cobalt stand, they're 53 quid. Yeah.
Better be bloody good padded seats for that, and a blanket. I'm hoping as well.
Heated seats like in the car. Yeah. Right, I need to stand up for you here because this is my fault. Does Jack think that swigging from a bottle of Crony every 30 seconds makes him look hard? He was doing that to be polite because I bought the Kronenberg, so that was
It was
Tom.
very kind. You brought a big old crate, didn't you? Kronenberg. Does it make me feel hard? No, not really. I'm sipping from a miniature bottle of Kronenberg. If I wanted to act hard, I'd probably have like a string vest on and a can of Stella.
This is Sam. You can probably do this in one word. When the seagulls follow the trawler, is it because they think sardines will be thrown?
Yes.
Yep. Whales are frequently washed up in Holcombe Beach in Norfolk. Is it always a worry it might be Grant Holt?
Um,
And indeed,
I, I think in terms if we were looking at this from a factual point of view, I think it's been more south of the coast. There's been whales washing up in Winterton. So let's touch on
I
the
feel very
geographical.
out of my depth here.
Yeah, good banter, witty banter.
Last one then. Who invented the skip?
Who invented the skip?
It's an Alan Partridge line, isn't it? You're
Uh,
supposed to say,
I,
I don't know, bloody Bobby Moore for all I care. Jack,
I'm so out of touch with that, aren't I? I feel
oh
ashamed.
dear. Jack, you're an absolute gent. That was literally half an hour's worth of questions you did. So thank you very,
It's
very
good.
much.
No, I enjoyed it.
So, where can people find our legendary podcast from last week and the hopefully you lamenting some kind of defeat on Monday, however unlikely that seems. So give a bit of a plug for your channel, which is, I think, a real kind of, you were in there early, and I think it's a great channel and reflected by the number of views. And we're trying to do something similar-ish for Ipswich, but I think you've done a fantastic job.
Oh, that's very kind, and I think to touch on things as well, it was very interesting seeing the comments from Ipswich fans because I started my channel when I was 15, or 14 actually. So naturally, as a 15-year-old lad, you're going to be a bit of a dick, and I think I was, and I think I made some ill-judged comments early doors about Ipswich fans, and I've really kind of reflected this past week. What do I actually think about Ipswich as a club? And naturally, in my job, I've been to Mick McCarthy press conferences. I've watched Ipswich a hell of a lot. Do I actually hate Ipswich as a club? No. And do I hate Ipswich fans? No, I don't. And the whole of my dad's side of my family are from Suffolk. They were born in Pakefield and they went to Portman Road as they grew up. So it's a strange one. So yeah, it's been interesting to see the journey, and I think a lot of Ipswich fans would have watched that journey as well, going from me being a prepubescent Norwich fan, slagging Ipswich fans off and giving it big to hopefully now a slightly more balanced view, and hopefully you guys can consume the content slightly more enjoyably. But Talk Norwich City on YouTube, the TNC podcast on iTunes. Yeah, I think it was a good one Monday. So check it out if you haven't already.
And what about your Twitter?
Personal Jack Reeve TNC. Chris's is at Chris Revo. And
I think he's got a few follows since Tuesday, hasn't he?
And Talk Norwich City as well is the standard account.
Brilliant stuff. Well, a lot of people were asking for you to do this, and we didn't have it planned, did we? So,
No, we didn't.
We were going to just post the audio from Monday, but I think I might get lynched on Sunday if I'd have done that.
It's currently as we're recording this, it's 10 to 10. I was up at 4:30 this morning, so if I've spoken complete nonsense, let me off. I usually do that anyway, so who knows? I might just be rambling about absolute nonsense. But Benjamin, thank you for having me on. It's nice to see an Ipswich podcast and to see what's going on in the other side of the border. So it's good to see, and thank you for all Ipswich fans if you've got this far.
Yeah, and I know there was I know we're Mutual Admiration Society now, but I know there was a lot of praise for your role in the three-way dance that was Tuesday night. So Jack, I'll let you get some sleep. Thank you so much for coming on and doing 10 years worth of questions. You can have the last word, and then I'm going to stop recording.
See you on Sunday.